Good morning. A very warm welcome to all of you to SSA this morning, and we are very happy to see all of you. In Dubai, this is the SSA, though we have been conducting events in so many different countries, this is the first in Dubai, so it's quite exciting for all of us, and we are anxious to make sure that we make your time, the valuable time that you have taken to be here, really productive. So let me introduce myself. I'm Sashi, and I'm the MD for SSA Asia Pacific. And I would like to introduce you to Naveen, who is the MD for SSA International for the Middle East and Africa operations. While I don't know if I can do justice to really introduce Naveen in probably a minute or two, because he's really a passionate guy, and he has really built himself and his stature that probably will take me a long time to give you a background, but I'll try to do justice. Naveen is a mechanical engineer with an MBA from Thunderbird, which is a global management school in the US. And a highlight about that journey is that he was inducted to the Beta Gamma Sigma Honor Society for his academic excellence. So he's built himself in the space of excellence across everything that he does. He also holds a master's degree with distinction in lean enterprise from the University of Buckingham, UK. He has over 13 years of global consulting experience in the world of lean manufacturing, strategy, and change management. Of course, he is also a certified master black belt from ASQ. And he leads our SSA international business. And he's been leading the show forefront in our Muscat operations for the last 4 years. And now we start our journey in Dubai and look forward to making a mark in this region as well. So with that short introduction, I will call upon stage Naveen to take this forward. Thank you and welcome.
Good morning to you. Thank you so much for taking the time this morning. It really means a lot to us. SSA is very, very excited to be here in UAE, and it's really an honor for us to be in this August gathering this morning. We really hope that this session brings value to you, and if nothing else, prods some thought-provoking ideas, which hopefully will germinate into value addition to shareholders and stakeholders of your organization. Without further ado, let me give a brief introduction about this forum and why we are gathered this morning. I realize that the word lean featured in all our communications with you, so I'm sure that that sort of gave it away a little bit. So let me set the context briefly for this forum, and we have esteemed speakers this morning to really take you through their ideas and thoughts about lean management as a whole. So real quick, I don't want to state the obvious. We are living in challenging times, and the economies that are largely dependent on commodities for financing their budgets have faced challenges, and that has led to all the topical discussions around what next, and and which direction the economies are going, the global economy is going, and so on. So why are we talking about this? On one hand, yes, it's anybody's debate about what the long-term outlook for the oil prices are, and what that holds in store for economies that finance their growth, both public and private sector growth, largely fueled by one single commodity and its value. What does it hold in store? And I think to me, we can see both sides of the coin. Yes, there are challenges, but there are also phenomenal opportunities that it has opened up. Recently I was in a conference in Muscat with an esteemed group of chartered accountants, and they were really talking volumes about how across the border UAE has been a shining example of modernizing its economy, much before the challenges of the oil prices struck us. and I was quite awed by the kind of economic model that we have created. So what really it holds in store for us? I would like to call out one thought here. The industry is in need for moving away from oil dependency and really looking for ways to truly diversify in order to safeguard their futures. And where does lean fit into the scheme of things? I would like to probably leave that question open for the forum to explore. But the long and short of it is, there is so much, there is so much potential there is to bring out value in any enterprise. And to, I was recently, somebody shared on LinkedIn an interesting post, and I thought of, probably leaving you with a question for this forum to address. Somebody said a pessimist would look at a glass and say it's half empty, and an optimist would look at it and say it's half full. But a lean thinker would look at it and say, why is the glass twice as big as it ought to be? So that sort of sums it up to me, and I don't really want to spoil it for the rest of the speakers by going deeper into the subject at this point anymore. So what are the takeaways from this forum? First things first, this is a very pragmatic discussion. We are not talking theories here, and we really don't intend to discuss frameworks and models. We want this to engender a practical and a pragmatic discussion, and that's the primary objective of this forum. How lean thinking may help UAE businesses, and we will cut straight to the chase and really talk about how lean thinking can really bring value to businesses. And it's such a valuable management concept that still hasn't permeated as deeply as it ought to be and as it could be in these industries. Some real case studies and success stories, and answering how this may apply to my industry. And I think this is a burning issue on the top of your minds this morning, and we hope to bring about some answers to those questions, although I can't promise you will have answers to all those questions in a half-a-day forum for a subject that is as vast as this. And more importantly, defining the what and the why before the how. So we don't want to put the cart before the horse and say that this is the answer to all the problems, or this is the panacea. We know many management ideas and philosophies came and went, but as long as it is rooted in pragmatism and rooted in real change that can be brought about in an industry, that's what we are talking about. So we have very interesting sessions this morning. We have our keynote speaker. I'll briefly introduce Mr. Naveen Valrani. He will be talking about his views on staying positive, staying lean in current times of challenges. We have a session by NC, our founder chairman, Mr. NC Narayanan, on his views on nation's transformation strategy. He's had a phenomenal opportunity to witness not just organization transformation but nation's transformation through application of these breakthrough methods. We have Mr. T.N. Ranjan, who leads Zubair Corporation here in UAE, talking about how lean thinking can be embedded right at the design stage of any factory. We have I want to talk about myself. We have Mr. Alam Igdadi, General Manager of Global Transformers, talking about his experiences of bringing about fact-based management methods and how that can help, and that has helped his industry to bring about real meaningful improvements. So without further ado, I'd like to make a very brief introduction about SSA. I'm sure you're curious, who is SSA? Are we the company that organizes seminar? Well, we are management consultants. We are not a seminar or exhibition company. We consult on lean methods. We're a global management consultancy. A few quick slides to introduce SSA to you. SSA was founded in 1999 by NC Narayanan, our founder chairman, and I would like to call SSA as a social enterprise. SSA was founded with a very specific mission to help back in the day in India, to help Made in India synonymous with quality. India was going through its own balance of payment crisis, and we opened our economy and many industries went sick. So NC really started SSA with a mission to help Made in India synonymous with quality. But that proposition has really spanned a global landscape, and SSA has a footprint across 20 odd countries where we have delivered significant work in bringing about improvement and transformation to businesses. Of course, introduce NC later on as well. A very brief intro of him. NC was really involved in the early days of lean transformation at the TVS group when they brought about lean thinking back in 1980s. Back then it used to be called as just-in-time or JIT manufacturing systems and so on. So he was one of the task force leaders who was involved in bringing out waste and making factory layouts and so on. So that sort of sowed the seeds of opening or setting up a consultancy many years later, which in the form of SSA, and he's authored many books and on lean and business improvement and pragmatic leadership and so on and so forth. And we have a leadership team here. I lead SSA in Middle East, which represents our 2 offices in Oman and UAE. Just about set up shop in Dubai, and I'm very, very excited to be here with you. And we'll talk more about our stories here in UAE as we go along. A few of our board members who represent SSA as a 45-member team today of consultants with very diverse and very varied experiences coming from different walks and backgrounds. And few of our global clientele, we are domain agnostic, so we really, it doesn't matter if you're a bank or an insurer or a manufacturer or a logistics or a supply chain entity. We are domain agnostic, so we work with the likes of the DHLs of the world and the ABN AMROs of the world, right down to local players here in the region, paint manufacturers and electrical industry, you name it. So, and these are few of our clients here in the region. Our Oman office is a little older. It's been, as an entity, we've been in Oman for about three odd years. So we've had sort of a longer stint in Oman as compared to UAE. But we work with all the top conglomerates like the Towel groups and the Khimji groups of Oman, if you're familiar with. And as I mentioned, we're domain agnostic. So SSA is really not, we do a lot of work, for example, with the pharmaceutical industry, which is battling regulatory challenges to bring about quality methods in their new drug application or the A&D applications, quality by design, and so on. We do a lot of work with manufacturers, we do a lot of work with service industries, and so on. A small footprint, we have 5 global offices where we operate out of, 2 in South Asia and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, aside from India, and 2 here in the region in Oman and UAE. But we pretty much cover quite a vast geography through these presence. So a quick few slides on the partnership model for SSA to so we pretty much laid our hands in every aspect of a business, looking at the famous Michael Porter value chain. We pretty much laid our hands in manufacturing to the support functions, to information flow, lean supply chain, you name it. So sometimes very hard, it becomes very nebulous to define what is your core competency. Well, our core competency is to partner with you to unleash hidden value in the organization. And how do we do it? With proven methods of lean thinking. We have our own proprietary method for going about deploying lean methods, which is the lean armor methodology, which sort of brings in a structure and a systematic approach to the whole process, really touching upon the supply chain, touching upon the service within manufacturing industries and pure play service industries, support functions, IT interfaces. So it really permeates all facets of the business. And our partnering model really transcends strategy, operational excellence, and design excellence. So it really is an integrated approach, which means that we don't jump in and say, okay, can we go and reduce inventory in the warehouse, or can we go and reduce shipping delays? We rather would like to look at the big picture of the organization. For example, we are doing some transformation work with large government assets in Oman, where the government put in a lot of money into these assets, but they're not returning value to shareholders. So the real question is, it's not about losing some material in the shop floor, or it's not about not delivering in time, but it's a much more complex issue which transcends demand planning, forecasting, scheduling, bringing parts in time, controlling quality in the factory, delivering on time. So it's really a very sort of, in the words of Deming, he says the system, right? So how can the system be improved so that it creates superior value to shareholders? So these are the 3 levers which largely we crank to be able to bring about that value. And the strategy planning itself is an elongated process. We have an adaptation of the balanced scorecard approach, which translates a very pragmatic approach to strategy formulation, and not really sort of ideation process alone. And we have a proprietary 4D approach for transformation. Again, we realized over the years of struggle to try to adapt the proven science to various industries, we realized that we need a framework. And the 4D approach is really hinged on our ability to quickly diagnose where the organization is losing money, where the pain points are, what the customers are not happy with, where the money is going down the drain, and to be able to put together a very robust deployment approach focused on very, very focused system improvement projects that translates to time-bound results to the organization. So a typical 4D approach would be a 3 to 6 month engagement to really bring about a very fast-track improvement to the organization. Because I won't go into all of these, but our approach really transcends these 6 levers, which is how quickly information flows, how quickly material flows in the organization, the IT systems, people engagement, and so on and so forth. And few case studies. Of course, I won't talk about it now because in the later part of the presentation, we have some very interesting case studies to go about how factory transformation or how the transformation of support functions within those organizations help them to really unleash hidden value. And IT system, we have our MD of SSA Technologies, Ganesh Iyer, with us, and you can probably pick his brain later on the coffee break of how the IT system weaknesses or lacunae really pulls down the organization. And Ganesh does interesting work on, he comes from the IT world, so, but he's not an IT head. He's sort of a business, he's more oriented towards the business side to be able to identify where the IT is not delivering value to business and to be able to highlight and improve those value drivers. So organization restructuring, mergers and acquisition advisory, we get involved in the early stages of M&A where you want to assess the value of an asset. Can it really bring value to shareholders? Is it really hold the potential? How good the operations are? Is it really worth procuring this asset? And can this asset generate more value? If so, what steps could be taken to generate that value? The whole 9 yards of M&A advisory SSA does. And we realize that there is more value here because many times the decisions are more based on financial numbers and financial ratios and not so much on operational indicators because we can't really get our head around complexities and time is short. So this is where SSA can come in and help. And we have a whole suite of learning and development solutions. We are ISET accredited providers, which means we are among the world's top training providers on lean methods, Six Sigma, whole suite of Six Sigma, black belt, green belt, and the whole 9 yards of certification and so on. And these are some of the books. We have some copies, complimentary copies of some of the books published by SSA, authored by NC. Happy reading for the same. These are our coordinates. So without further ado, let me welcome our next speaker, Mr. Naveen Valrani. Let me give a brief introduction of Naveen. Naveen is the CEO of the Engineering Services Cluster of Al-Shirawi Group, and he's also the CEO of Al-Shirawi's Education Initiative, the Arcadia Preparatory School. He was ranked as Facility Management CEO of the Year in 2014 Arabian Business Indian CEO Award, and currently sits at number 2 on Facilities Management Middle East ranking of Facilities Management Power 50 in 2016. He graduated from the Wharton School, the undergraduate business school, and the University of Pennsylvania. He also holds an MBA from the London Business School, where he sits on the International Alumni Council. So Naveen, a big round of applause for Naveen, please. The topic he's going to be talking about is Be Positive, Be Lean. We are very eagerly looking forward to his talk this morning.
Thank you. My introduction to SSA, apart from Naveen and I sharing the same name, was actually through our corporate quality manager who's here today, our general manager actually of corporate quality, Mr. Krishna Kumar, who's ex-British Standards Institute. And when we wanted to look at lean for one of our manufacturing companies, he had worked with SSA in his past life and suggested them, and I got the opportunity to meet Mr. Narayan and Naveen, and was extremely impressed with their mode of thinking. And we've employed them on multiple fronts, one of which I will talk about today. But I'd like to really start off today by asking a really simple question. I want you to be really honest. I know many of you here are from manufacturing backgrounds. But if you were given a choice, let's say in Dubai, is everybody from Dubai here?
Yeah.
Yes, everyone's from Dubai? Okay. So if you were given a choice, would you rather be working in the Al Quoz industrial area, or Dubai Industrial City, or Ras Al Khaimah Industrial Free Zone, or Rakia, or would you rather be working in, let's say, DIFC? So who'd rather be working in the industrial areas? About 3. Okay, some people are getting bored. Would be rather working in DIFC? Okay, so about a 50-50 split. Usually when I ask this kind of question, the general answer is people would rather be working in DIFC. It's a nice place to work, very good looking people around, restaurants, buzzing, feels good. And really that is, the answer to this question is the fundamental problem as to why lean has taken so long to be adopted despite it being so effective. As Naveen said, that lean has a lot of potential, brings in a lot of benefits, but lean's fortunes are largely tied to the fortunes of the manufacturing industry, globally. And as economies move on, and as villages become towns and towns become cities, as urbanization happens, those cities become more and more service-oriented. And what you start seeing in cities, which arguably you're seeing in Dubai as well, is a decline of the manufacturing sector, which is in turn more than compensated by a growth in the services sector. I can see many of you in the room are from the Indian subcontinent, many of you are from India. And in India, despite all the hype around IT, the IT sector employs only a fraction of what the manufacturing sector employs in India or the agriculture sector employs in India. So despite all the hype, despite all the buzz about Indian IT and Indian outsourcing, it's a very, very small employer in the whole context of this. So with that, I'd like to get into my presentation and really talk about the global environment today. Naveen touched upon this, but we're in a very, very interesting environment today, globally, in a global context. Firstly, global growth is anemic. This morning I was reading an article where Christine Lagarde, the head of the IMF, made a statement that post-09, post-08 crisis, productivity growth is negligible. And if this phenomena continues, for the first time we have a real threat that there will be a decline in global living standards. Historically, we've always seen since the Industrial Revolution that living standards have improved decade on decade. But in this particular upcoming decade, unless we get global growth moving again, there will be a decline of living standards. And really, we are faced with a situation globally where there is really not much growth in economies. There are exceptions, but by and large, global growth is at a very, very low level. This particular environment has also led to central banks reducing interest rates to levels never seen before. There's a small uptake in the US, but that uptake is likely to be very, very small. So for the first time, in the longest time, you can borrow money for almost at zero interest rates. Okay, very, very close to zero. So that's another scenario that we are faced with, where very little growth, low interest rates, which are likely to persist. And when there are low interest rates, what happens from an investor's perspective is when you borrow low, your expectation in terms of the money you want for the return you want is also low. Okay, because you're borrowing cheaper. So if I'm borrowing at 1%, and if I'm making 2% on that money, I'm making 100% margin. So that's the kind of scenario now that investors are faced with, that the days of trying to make 15% on your capital are largely going. And then there are geopolitical events, major geopolitical events, that are likely to negatively impact economic growth. For example, Brexit. Okay? Now, of course, there's two sides of this story, but one thing for sure, that Brexit, unless Britain strikes the deal of a lifetime, which is going to be highly unlikely, Brexit is going to harm trade as far as the UK is concerned, and as far as Europe is concerned. You have a major component of Europe that is being removed, and hence economic growth in Europe is going to be at a real risk in the coming 5-7 years. So this is sort of the global scenario. In the Middle East, as Naveen said, we have low oil prices. And my call on this is that these prices are not going anywhere. in terms of they're not going to go to the levels that we saw 2-3 years ago, the $100 plus levels. Why? So the simple reason is that America is now drilling oil through shale technology like they've never drilled before. And productivity in America on this particular technology is improving very, very rapidly. So every time the oil price crops up, America starts drilling more, and the oil price comes right back down. And really this scenario is not going to change. And this really will lead to what I have on the screen there. Necessity is the mother of invention. So economies in the Gulf will be are forced to look at new models. And what we're seeing is Dubai, for instance, is looking at the tourism sector, has always looked at the tourism sector and is looking at it even more aggressively. The services sector. Qatar, Doha, is looking at sport and culture. Saudi is looking at how to start boosting its housing program, is looking at privatization. So new models will emerge in the Middle East. And as a result of this low economic growth, low oil price scenario, it's going to be increasingly challenging to start looking at revenue growth on the top line, particularly for established companies. And hence, we will not have a choice but to look at our cost structures. I hope I'm making sense here. And because we won't have a choice, but to look at our cost structures, this is really where lean has a huge potential. And this is where I encourage all of you to look at lean manufacturing techniques, for those of you that belong to the manufacturing industry, in order to improve your cost structures. Also very important, and again, this is not part of my presentation, but is if you look at the rise of what we call populist political parties globally, and populist agenda globally. When I say populist agenda, you see the rise of someone like Donald Trump in the United States. You see France with Marine Le Pen making huge strides, arguably Brexit as well. These political leaders have largely come to power on the promises of employment. And these promises of employment are based on manufacturing industries. And so there is very likely going to be a huge revival in focus on manufacturing industries. So the first question I asked about whether you'd like to work in DIFC or Alcoa's industrial area. So you will see the rise of the Alcoa's industrial areas and the importance of them globally. And we're already seeing it in America. There's a huge promise on the steel industry. There's a huge promise on the coal industry. And really this is what's causing the rise of these type of political figures. So again, very important to understand, huge focus on manufacturing industry, and given the environment, huge focus on cost structure. So really an ideal platform to focus on lean. So in terms of lean manufacturing, when you start looking up lean manufacturing, it was invented supposedly in 1988. The concept was first coined in 1988. But even as early as the 18th century, in 1750, Benjamin Franklin, who was the founder of my university and a great inventor, he said a quote, which I have on the screen: "He that idly loses 5 seconds worth of time loses 5 seconds, and might as prudently throw 5 seconds into the river." So that thinking of lean went back centuries. Revenue growth, as I said, is falling out of favor. For far too long, and you may be facing this on a quarter-to-quarter basis, on an annual basis, management boards sit in meetings and say, okay, what's your sales going to be next year? How much are you improving sales? Right? Typical question. We want 10% growth. If you're not going to achieve your 10% growth, we want to restructure. That type of thinking is, in today's environment, extremely dangerous. Because the economic growth is just not available for companies across the economy to increase revenue. And hence, again, organizations need to focus on costs. And lean needs to be back on the agenda as far as board meetings is concerned. So in terms of what is needed for lean success, and lean is really a form of thinking, but first and foremost, it's top management commitment. It's a commitment that, look, revenue growth is nice and we're going to continue to explore avenues to grow revenue, but we've got to bring costs to the forefront. And we've got to look at efficiencies, we've got to look at flows, we've got to look at minimizing waste, and this really has to be an agenda item on board meetings. It rarely is. I sit on a lot of boards, and I can tell you, I don't think I've ever, or maybe one out of, let's say, 20 meetings, we talk about cost structures. 19 of them, we talk about revenue growth. Okay? So again, that type of thinking needs to change. There has to be a thorough understanding of the processes. Now, I know Naveen in his slides alluded to lean being also a concept that can be applied to the service industry. And yes, I fully back that proposition. But the fact is that lean was invented in the manufacturing industry, and the growth of lean will happen in the manufacturing industry. Maybe Naveen will disagree with me. But it's important, in order to implement lean, you need to have a thorough understanding of the processes that take place on the shop floor. And not every one of us have a thorough understanding of the processes. And that's where an organization like SSA plays such a big role. So when we decided to go for lean in our duct factory in Dubai Industrial City, we realized, at my level, I realized that I needed an organization that could truly dig in and understand the processes that are happening on the shop floor. My team, the production team and the management team at the factory knew them fully well. But I knew that I needed an external agency like SSA to come in, understand the processes, measure productivity, and come back to me as to how I could improve productivity. And that was my first engagement with SSA. So very important to understand the processes, and if you don't understand them, to appoint organizations who can understand them and simplify them for you. Measurement and verification. So once you've understood the processes, it's important to start measuring them. And just measuring them doesn't always work. You need to ensure that you verify as well. So you measure something, you measure improvement, and then you verify. You ensure that the right protocols are in place, the IT systems are in place, and those play an extremely important role in order for you to measure progress as lean is implemented on the shop floor. And finally, you need a culture of positivity around lean. And this is not easy to achieve. When controlling or talking about the manufacturing shop floor is largely never appealing to most people. I know it is to a lot of people in this room. We enjoy manufacturing, but to a lot of people, they find it really boring. It doesn't strike a chord. So it's important to somehow overcome that boredom or that lack of interest and really get your team invigorated by manufacturing. Get them excited about a machine that will improve productivity, about the fact that there's less queuing on a particular machine. There has to be excitement that is built around lean. So I would encourage all of you to firstly be positive, because the global environment is ripe for lean manufacturing. It's a great time. I mean, if I were to say, if there was one thing that I could wish for at the end of my presentation in terms of the impact that I'm making on all of you, is for you to go back to your organizations and say, look, it's time we start looking at wastages, it's time we start looking at flows, which is basically all lean manufacturing, And really it's time for us to become super efficient, because it's going to be very, very difficult to increase revenue. Western governments, as I mentioned, people like Donald Trump and all, are bringing a focus back on manufacturing. They're talking about the steel industry, they're talking about the coal industry, they're talking about bringing back jobs. The focus has come back now to manufacturing. Low interest rate environments is creating an opportunity for lean like never before. People are expecting lower returns. As a result, cost structures are coming back into play. And we need to ensure that we have the right level of expertise. And again, they're available in the form of consultants and commitment for lean to succeed. I want to spend the last couple of slides talking about our own experience with lean. And you know, I talked about our first engagement with SSA, which was basically surrounding an existing factory and improving productivity within an existing environment. But our second project with lean was actually a greenfield project where we were setting up a new factory. We had an existing small factory in Dubai Industrial City, we still have it, for manufacturing air handling units, and we are now migrating into what is truly going to be a world-class facility in Dubai Investment Park. And in setting up this factory, we found it important that we got outside expertise in ensuring that lean was implemented on the shop floor, so that the machine layouts, the planning of the factory, the capacity planning, the manpower planning would meet not only current demand but future demand projections. And really we gave a mandate, which is on the screen, to SSA, that we wanted to create a bright, productive and scalable factory in every aspect of design. So what SSA did is they came down to our existing factory. And they, you know, here are some pictures of the older plant. We were cramped on space, material flow was an issue, and they really planned out, and this is typical, I don't know if any of you have worked with SSA, but this is very typical of the kind of flow chart that you'll see very, very early on, where our processes were broken up, the linkage between the processes was mapped, and it allowed SSA to get a picture of what is happening on the shop floor. The goal was to create flow in all activities. So flow is typically disrupted in many areas. There's queuing, there's disempowered staff, long processing routes, quality problems, backlogs, handoffs, different teams doing different things. And really, the idea was to counter all those measures, have a smooth flow, be customer focused, be efficient, have the shortest lead time, be waste intolerant, and be right the very, very first time. So what they did, and again, this is a very, very complex slide, but what SSA did, they did a capacity and space assessment for various scenarios. And really the scenarios are mapped here. And there's actually 9 different scenarios here. But what's going to happen in 2017 with 1 shift, with 2 shifts, and with 1 shift, this is in the existing facility, with 1 shift in the new facility. 2018, we again move on to DIC, and we, without the slitting and shearing process, how it works out, because that was creating waste, and really all the way down to 2022. The space required, the additional space required, the area required, and the available space. If you look at this, very, very interesting observation here, that even all the way to 2022, SSA, along with our production team, has planned for a total area requirement of only 6,500 square meters against an available of 7,000. So running almost at full capacity, they've been able to plan a factory out that will take care of demand projections. In terms of visualizing the new facility, what SSA did for us, along with our production team, is feeder units have now been planned for, arranged to offer just-in-time supply of components. Workstations have been made ergonomic, so we have easy access to materials and tools. A lean structure with our supply chain, the 5 S's, and of course housekeeping along with that. Minimum inventory, which obviously means lower investment, higher returns for investors, and low lead time manufacturing. Really the basic concepts of lean. So really we've had a very, very positive experience with SSA, and we're hoping to use them in many of our manufacturing industries. And again, I'd like to thank both Mr. Narayan and Naveen for allowing me to speak on this forum. And again, if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. I'll try my best.
I have a question.
Sure.
You mentioned earlier in the presentation that you attend a lot of meetings and you sit on the board. And you said 19 out of them you talk about revenue growth and one of them you talk about cost structure.
Yeah.
While the emphasis was, and you said that revenue growth is not there today.
Correct.
So how did you manage those kind of situations?
So it's not how to, I'm still managing them. So I have a duty right now as a board member. So one of the duties of being a good board member is what we call the duty of candor, which is the duty of being frank. And one of the things that board members need to accept is that we're heading into a low revenue growth or a zero revenue growth model. And they really need to accept this philosophy, and part of the duty rests on us as good managers. So when we make our projections, what good investors are interested in is the bottom line. How much money are you making for me? I'm investing this much money, how much are you making for me? So what we really need to project is very, very low growth and really a big improvement in productivity. So what your typical budgeting process will do is show a lower labor cost because you have higher efficiencies, and as a result an improvement in gross margins which will lead to a higher profit, but not higher revenue growth creating your higher profit. So a large part of the responsibility rests on us as good managers, that we need to start projecting differently. We need to start looking at improvement in gross margins, which is what lean brings about, and not improvement in revenue. And investors will understand, because for them they want either the same return for the buck or a higher return for the buck. And you'll be giving them that through higher gross margins. So the focus has to be on productivity, not on the top line. And again, it's a very, very difficult proposition to manage. It's very, very difficult, sometimes impossible. But as a board member or as a manager, it's your duty to be frank and to say, look, this is the current scenario. Now, this doesn't apply to all industries. Okay? I mean, there are industries in the Middle East that are experiencing growth. In Dubai, for instance, the construction sector is experiencing growth. This is not going to last forever. Okay? So even if you are in that kind of industry where you're supplying into the construction industry, you need to prepare yourselves today for an eventuality of low growth or no growth. Okay. I was reading an article on the Wall Street Journal last week. The shale oil industry in 2014, and this is basically, shale oil industry is a process that works there, is a process called fracking. And it's horizontal drilling. So typically we used to drill for oil vertically, and my understanding is, and today through fracking, we're drilling for oil horizontally in the United States. And a whole new discoveries of oil have come about as a result. Now, drilling horizontally has not been as efficient as drilling vertically. So it's a lot cheaper to produce oil in Saudi Arabia or Abu Dhabi than it is in the United States. But to give you an example of the improvement in productivity in America, in 2014, it's not long ago, just a few years ago, it used to take 38 days to drill 1 mile horizontally. 38 days. Today on average, in 2017, it takes 20 days. And there are companies that are doing it in 10 days. Okay, so 400% improvement almost in productivity on shale oil drilling. There are technologies that are being deployed where on your iPhone, you can put a tip on the drill, and through your phone, your iPhone or your Android device, you can control the direction of the tip. So you can, when it hits a block, you can tell it to go left, you can tell it to go right, and this is how productivity improvements are coming about. Now, I don't know much about the oil industry. I'm no expert. This is just from my own reading. But these are the type of productivity improvements that are coming about. And these type of improvements in your own specific industries will improve gross margins. Okay, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else?
So how much time is taken to implement everything? How long duration?
So when it came to the new factory, we gave SSA a specific task, and that task has been completed now. So the task was come and understand our processes and recommend the design for the new factory and justify to us why this design is. And that task, I think it took 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Yeah, it took 6 weeks. Yeah, it was supposed to be about a month. It took 6 weeks to complete that entire project. Typically, it happens very, very quickly. The delay, ironically, is not in implementation from, let's say, an organization like SSA. The delay, ironically, is in management approvals to get SSA to come.
Very well said.
So you typically need approval, you need to raise a purchase order, it needs to go to this cycle and that cycle, this person and that person, and then the questions are asked. And then once that is all approved, you need to make sure everyone's available. So your production manager is on leave, your logistics head is not available. So these are really the problems. The actual process itself doesn't take long.
What was the main challenges you faced while implementing the Lean?
So I would say from my perspective, the biggest challenge in our factory was actually the unit of measurement. We produce various products, and we sell those products in different units of measurements. So some are sold in numbers, some are sold in square meters, some are sold in tons, because they're different products. And if you want to measure productivity from an IT perspective, I don't know if the IT gentleman will agree with me, you have to take all these units of measurement and try, through scientific investigation, to standardize it to a single measure as to how productive are you on the shop floor, because the same shop floor is producing everything. So from my perspective, the biggest challenge was actually standardizing the unit of measurement. I know it's a very, very specific challenge, but I think some of you may be able to relate who are in manufacturing. And that really, if you have different units of measurement, it's a challenge. Anything else?
What is the payback period by investing the money?
In what? In lean?
Yeah.
Okay. I need to know a lot more information about your business to answer that question. But look, lean is not a cost. There's no cost apart from the fee that you pay SSA. But there's not necessarily a cost. So SSA won't come in and tell you, look, you need to buy a whole load of new machines, or you need to start investing in this and that. In fact, it's very, very rare that you'll get that kind of recommendation. So really, you don't have an investment. What you have is knowledge that is being imparted. So for instance, our factory layout, we didn't invest any additional money because SSA came in. In fact, if anything, you'll invest less money because SSA will say, look, you don't need this extra machine. Why are you hiring the extra machine? Oh, you don't need that much labor. So in one of our businesses, we were able to increase productivity by almost 30% by just looking at flows. Just taking one machine which was in the wrong place and putting it in the right place. So there's no real investment. Sorry if I sound like a marketing campaign for SSA. I'm not getting any fee from them.
Many years ago, you went GE with the Six Sigma approach, kind of refining
Yeah, I mean, that's very much a part of Lean. So if you look at NC's books, they're very much, Six Sigma Lean. So yeah, very, very much in the same line of thinking. And again, the challenge, particularly in a city like Dubai, is that there's such a huge focus on tourism and services that to get manufacturing industries back on the map is becoming increasingly challenging. And to get talent for manufacturing industries is also becoming challenging. So really, that's really, I would say, the biggest challenge. But yeah, that line of thinking is very prevalent in Lean and very prevalent globally in manufacturing industries.
As a client of SSA, why SSA didn't invent Lean? So
Correct.
why did you pick SSA compared to any other consultant?
Good question. Good question. So there were a couple of reasons. Firstly, we were introduced to them by our general manager for business excellence and quality, who I have a great deal of respect for, and he had worked with them before. So the fact that they had partnered with an organization like BSI immediately gave them a head start as far as I was concerned. The second thing that impressed me was obviously their qualifications and their background. So Naveen's introduction was, spoke volumes about his bio. So I was very, very impressed with the background. And the fact that they, at least from my perspective, the work ethic was just phenomenal. As I said, someone asked the question on investment. Now look, the last 10, 20, 30,000 dirhams is not going to make a difference given the amount of saving you're looking at on a manufacturing shop floor. And if you ask me dead honestly, and probably a lot of you don't believe this, but we single sourced with them. I didn't look at anyone else. Because as soon as they came in, they made their presentation, the choice that I was faced with was, do I sit and shop around and spend another 6 months doing this? Or do I get going and making savings right away? And I chose the latter. Because I said, their fee, I probably shouldn't say this, it will affect my negotiation with them, but their fee was a fraction of what they would save the organization. So really, it was a very, very easy decision. So I think, timing always plays a role, being at the right place at the right time. They were already in Oman, and the fact that they knew our general manager of quality. So, no matter, whatever you call it, destiny, that, but they were at the right place at the right time, and they were impressive. Okay, thank you very, very much.
Wonderful keynote presentation by Naveen, and quick highlights of his talk and a few points that really caught my attention I wanted to mention. So Naveen spoke very eloquently about how global manufacturing is really with the Trump campaign and the populist movements elsewhere, and how lean thinking can really help to bring a lot of value to enterprises that are, looking at manufacturing as a key driver, but not just manufacturing. And that's where my difference is that it's therefore we coin lean thinking, a very seminal work by Womack and Jones, by the way, on lean thinking, which just says, the methodology is the what and how, but the lean thinking needs to permeate. Great talk. Thanks once again, Naveen, for the same. Our next speaker is NC Narayanan, our founder chairman of SSA. A quick background of NC. NC is a renowned author, speaker, and management guru. He is the founder chairman of SSA group of companies, and he is known to be a vanguard in the field of lean and business transformation, and is an advisor to several CEOs and boards on transformation strategies. NC has authored several books on topics ranging from lean to leadership. His latest book, titled Pragmatic Leadership, published by McGraw-Hill publication, is receiving rave reviews. We have few copies, perhaps. And NC has chaired several conferences in across the globe, largely GCC, Africa, Southeast Asia, offering us thought leadership on business strategies. NC's talk is about nation's transformation strategy, and he'll touch briefly upon strategic cost management as an important theme. Let's welcome NC with a round of applause.
Good morning to you. It's very difficult to fill the space what Naveen Valrani has left. Thank you very much. And whenever a client speaks so well about the service provider, sometimes it's so, you feel that, as he rightly said, he's trying to market SSA. Thank you very much for overwhelming kind of an image that you have built for us. So it's my privilege and pleasure to be with you today and quickly take the topic forward. What I'm going to probably cover quickly before the tea break is I had the privilege of, in the 30 years of my corporate life and the last 20 years of consulting, traveling around almost 20 countries, there are certain commonality that prevails between the developed economy and the developing economy. One strange information I read some time back is two-thirds of the world's population are there in the part of the developing countries. Primarily the largest population may be India, China, and the rest of the Asia Pacific countries and GCC. And 1/3 of the population lives in the developed country. Yeah, we try to classify that way. And it's very strange that the world's gross income, almost 60 to 70% of the income is coming from the 1/3 of the population.